Take back control. Stop letting algorithms decide your news. Get uncensored history and real knowledge to strengthen your mind, body, and spirit. Watch ad-free content now at ineverknewtv.com premium.
Well, let me hear you say mountain, mountain, mountain.
Fire, what you saying?
Red, give thanks to life, Fire Key.
Serious thing. We are back again, bald head in the dread. We give thanks for everyone who's been supporting, tuning in, sharing the channel, sharing the podcast. That is, we give thanks for that. Have to remind the people, make sure you check out merch ineverknewtv.com. Also, if you want to see the full unedited versions of the interviews there, check out ineverknewtv.com premium. Fire, what reason about today?
Well, today we're reason about the whole concept of having a two-parent household, because we're having time realizing our culture, it's like the youths who grew up in a two-parent household, they get a lot of bullying, a lot of people trouble them and let them feel like that's a negativity due to the fact that majority of youths grew up in a single-parent household. So we really need to talk about that and how we are going to really demystify what's really taking place there and kind of improve that culture, because it can't stay that way, not at all. We can't make the good seem like the bad and the bad seem like the good. No.
My brother, man, he was actually criticized for having two parents growing up. I never got criticized personally. I never got it personally, but yeah, he told me he was criticized and made fun of because he had two parents. But that just shows you, shout out to a.k.a. Parker. He's the one I had the conversation with about the high level of dysfunction. You know, he spoke about how dysfunction is profitable, you know, because everything is broken up, this and that. But the level of dysfunction for you to be criticized for living with both parents, pretty wild when you think about it, because it really shows you the culture within a subculture, because that's not the norm. When I was teaching in Philly, I'll never forget, I always had a wedding band on my hand. And one day this kid was like, man, I was talking to someone else, and the kid was like, hi, so I know you was married. I was like, yeah, man, I'm married. He's like, man, that's wild. He was like, you got any kids? I was like, yeah. He was like, you live with your wife? I was like, yeah. He was like, you live with your kid? I was like, yeah. So listen to those list of questions now. Now I'll give you another example to show you the dualities of atmospheres and its influence on your psyche and how you believe things should be. There's a movie called Hoop Dreams from the early 90s where a director follows around some ball players in Chicago. One of the ball players, his pops, unfortunately, sadly, got addicted to drugs, and he left the house. And they would show scenes of the father being outside the house and the kid visiting the kid outside the house. My brother's son asked him, why isn't this man in the house with the family? Because what is his norm? Seeing two parents in the house, Fire. He got two parents in his house. His friends got two parents in the house. Maybe if it's a divorce going on, but there's still, his friends still have access to both parents. That's the environment that he's in. So it just shows you the magnitude of certain cultures, not the whole black culture, but, you know, subculture within the culture, where this family dynamic is the norm, where it is just one parent in the house, preferably a female for whatever reason, you know?
Yeah, and I think really the most interesting part about it is really the perspective. 'Cause there's a lot of different perspectives to it, right? From perspective of the parents and perspective of the child. But thinking about this conversation is really the perspective of the children, because with a lot of these children growing up in single parent household, they in turn think that that's the norm. They don't understand that there's a different world out there where children actually see the whole concept of male, female, and know that there's a balance. There's certain role that a man plays, because children literally live what they learn, and most people don't understand that, because especially when you have boys in a household, who is going to teach him how to become a man? You see what I say? And if there's no man to teach him how to become a man, no, his mother is forced to get rough. And that roughness that his mother brings towards him, not saying that his mother can't bring forth a success, she can't really raise a successful youth, but in the natural order of things, that father would be there to show him how to become a man. So most of these boys now internalize that concept. I feel like it's a norm now, where they don't really see certain things, and I find that they're the ones who mostly now criticize the youths them growing up in two parent also, because me get that as a youth growing up in the ghetto, and growing up in the ghetto is like a lot of points that you have to bring across. You often hear your friends saying, oh no, your point is not valid because you're privileged. So That's literally where people say to me every week, every month, every day. So I said, no, what is this privilege that we speak of? Because one day I really asked the man them, and the answers that I got was really appalling. Because one, they're saying, okay, you don't know what it's like to even worry about anything at all. So I'm like, so from you grew up in a household with two parents, there's no worries. But I see from thinking about it from their perspective, they're thinking that that's the only thing that they desire. They desire that, they want that, they think that that's the kind of, like a heaven and hell concept in their head. Their desire of that ideal life is to have a two parent. And why do they desire that? Because they realize the functionality of it. But with them realizing the functionality of it now, the only way to feel normal back is to trouble that person who has two parents in the household and make them feel bad for that thing. And I feel like that is where we really need to draw the line, because the fact that these children are the ones who are kind of enforcing that. So to them now, they grow up thinking that, well, it's better to be in that single parent household because that privilege and all of that will take you out of the world and make you become foolish or something, because they think that you have less sense and you're less prone to certain things once you have two parents, and it never really make no sense. It don't really make any sense at all.
And their analysis is so inaccurate because they didn't experience it. So they just have this utopia view of two-parent household, right? Now, the thing is that too, another misconception they have is that, and I witnessed this, as I said, they think you're softer because you have two parents, because you're not dependent on the type of parents you have. You're not able to be outside as much as them, and don't have that willy nilly night style. And they think that if you have the two parents, you're softer, and we know that's not the case, right? It's a lot of there's a lot of misconceptions. It's just like, I don't know if it's just a survival tactic because you desire something, as you said, you can't have, so your default is to criticize it, or it's so normalized where it's like they do think that's the case. But I know for me, I did hear that. I didn't get the like my brother thing, but I kind of got a vibe that people thought you were a little softer because you had two parents. Then when you prove them wrong, that argument kind of stops.
That is one of the biggest fine for children.
Yeah. So, but the thing is that I will say that though, man, we had a thing when I was teaching, man. I bring up the teaching because it's such a great experience. We had a thing called Nearpod, right? Nearpod is a great app. I'm not trying to promote it because I ain't get paid for it, but it's great because in a lot of environments, the brilliant kids, for whatever reason, they don't want to show their brilliance to their peers, so they don't like saying the answers out loud. But they'll do the work, and they could put the answer in there. Then, like, what I would do is I would read the answer, but I want to say who it's from. Repeat. So, but one of the kids we were talking about, it was a social emotional learning. We were talking about families, and she was expressing how she had great disdain for children with fathers. She was saying she didn't even like going over her friends' homes with the fathers because it made her hurt so bad, and she had a disgust for it. And we have to factor that in that pain and that I guess abandonment that they feel. And that's a whole different conversation because there's no reason why that take place, not necessarily because the father doesn't want to be there. But yeah, we have to acknowledge that aspect of it, and I think it's a default because then there's the idea that I don't need it, but yeah, you don't need what you never had. People think like people think their normal is normal when it's not really that normal. You just never experienced nothing else. And I think that's what's taking place far as is that I don't want to use the big T word, but that trauma, it's that trauma, and it's just a vibe where it's like you never had that, you never experienced it, so you have this distorted analysis, and I think they really think that like it's like, you ever saw a movie called Antoine Fisher? It's a great movie. A young brother that was in the foster care system that was molested and had a lot of anger issues, but there's a scene of his idea what he had as a family, as a functioning family, and I think that it's just a utopia of perfection. No family's a perfection, form of perfection, but I will say that if both parents are working, those two incomes does cool down the pressure a lot.
But it's funny too, because when I go back to one of the biggest points you mentioned about the children who grew up in single parent household think that those who grew up in with a household with two parents is soft. it don't them not really understand the concept of discipline, and I think that's where it really come into play, and that's why the criticism takes so much take place so much, because they don't realize that there's a sense of discipline where you grow up. Because I definitely feel the one to the core. When you while they can roam the street at nights without certain permissions or certain guidance, and you have that discipline instilled where you're on that program, you have a set bedtime, you have a set routine. They think that routine is dysfunction, not understanding that their lifestyle is really dysfunctional based off of how their whole family structure. And that now in turn it lead to a whole heap of disdain from the child who grew up in that two-parent household, because now they want to do what they see their peers doing, not understanding that this routine and this discipline and guidance that you have is the very core basis of your life that will help you in the future. And remember, it's youths, so when they really just want to interact and be social and mingle, not realizing that, so automatically being exposed to that, sometimes it show them off course and think that their parents know they have a disdain against their parents, not realizing that there's a structure that is really set in place for them to benefit. So is that I think that's where we sometimes we need to draw the line, and then bringing it back to the parents now and taking it from the child's angle. What the parents need to realize that our actions are actually affecting our children, and it's affecting the way that they socialize, it's affecting the way that they think, it's affecting what they consider as norms. And the fact that they consider these things as norms, they're verbalizing this within their surrounding, and we don't really have an understanding of what they're verbalizing within their surrounding. And you see what they verbalize within their surrounding amongst their peers, that becomes their reality, that they initially, when they grow up, that's instilled in them, and they in turn foster and come teach the younger generation the same thing. And that's how the cycle really continues. So we have to realize it, we have to use a lot of these things and break the cycle. And if we don't use these things and break the cycle, then it's going to continue and continue. And then the worst part about it to me is that the ones on the right path will end up go on the wrong path, thinking that that's the right thing to do, until they grow up and realize, oh shit, say what I was actually, the environment that I was actually in, this was a stable environment. No, I leave the stable environment and go into an unstable environment. And that's where you really have to learn the hard way that, hey, all of these glitter and things that seem cool, because we're in a small environment, we're clustered, and it has so much negativity. That negativity might seem as a good thing, but when you go out in the bigger world and experience certain things and start mingling with certain people who know the norm is to grow up in a two-parent household, understanding that there's lessons from mother and there's lessons from father, then you start realize that, oh, I was actually being groomed the right way, but because of my environment, I was taught that this was wrong. And that's a very serious thing, and it's nothing to neglect, because really and truly it might sound away, but we see the behaviors of these youths. Like, we can't go around it. A youth, the statistics show it. A youth who grew up in a single parent household versus a youth who grew up in a two-parent household, they might have certain behavioral problems and issues.
But the children, in regards to the criticism, though, they want the discipline. Because what I noticed, that what I learned over the years, is because I had a lot of friends that was kind of, they could do whatever they want. They didn't feel the same level of love because they felt like no one cared for them. No one checking for them. They don't know how to express it, but they kind of want, kids want this. Fire, listen, anyone who like dealt with kids, the roughest ones, fire them, the ones show you the most. Like, they want that nurture, they want love, and they want discipline. Like, they like structure. Don't get it twisted. And kids want that, and they feel left out when they don't have that. You get them? Like, how a man supposed to feel like no one cares where you are? No one knows where you are? Yeah,
internalize that.
Yeah, been laughy for a little bit, but it touched you after a while. I said, well, don't nobody care. Like, don't nobody even know? Like, it's late. Don't nobody care that I'm out? Nobody care about my well-being? Nobody care how I'm doing in school? Nobody care about nothing that's going on with me? Yeah, they talk about it when they're older. It kind of touch them, but they can't fully get the fullness. Some do. Some bright enough to get the fullness early. But when they get older, that's where all that pain come in. I say, yo, ain't nobody really. That's when they tell you they never felt loved or all this the other things that go on with it. So it's like a lot of that is deflection, you know. In regards to, you brought up something very good now, is that yes, it does. When the children are criticized, that does push a lot of kids to jump outside that shouldn't be outside because they want to be accepted by their peers. And that's where the toxic environment grabs people in. You ever saw this comic like Spider-Man? I think it's a guy called Venom, and the thing just like grab them. You know what I'm saying? And it's like it grab you outside because you're sitting there now, yeah, parents telling you what to do, but you're looking and it's a free fall. Then it's like you don't have that acceptance because you don't have that, you're not giving off that energy, you know. Then it's like, hey, let me step out. That's why you see some people like, why you don't need to do, why are you doing that? How much people you know in trouble, that got in trouble, that's locked up, that happened? Like, why are you fighting? You know, that's not your background. Like, why are you engaging in these activities? They want to be accepted, fire. There's been so much pressure to be accepted, and within, unfortunately, within a lot of communities within our culture, only certain behaviors are accepted. You know,
And I feel like we can be a good poster boy for this topic too, because really and truly, what you just mentioned a while ago, touch home again, because we're not gonna share all of it, but to share a personal piece, like, while a lot of these children in an unstable household in my surrounding used to feel like they are the toughest ones. Now, what I did in return was to let them know that, prove a point to them, like, you're not tough. So while proving that point, there's a way that there's a easy line that you can cross where you become in this world where you don't necessarily want to want to be a part of. So like, for me now, would it become so rough to the point where they started fearing certain traits of me per se that they had, right? They thought they had the trait, but I had to show them that, hey, you're not this tough. And this is how I'm going to show you that you're not this tough. So doing that now, it easily make you cross over from being that person within that stable, grounded household to that person in a different scenario and a different situation where you don't want to be in. But it's not, unfortunately, there's not a whole host of youth who can come back from that or leave that alone or just prove the point and then jump back out of proving that point, automatically going back to that stable and functional household and that functional mindset. So that is the unfortunate part of it. But I feel like from a youth perspective, we can't really expect the youth them to try to solve all of these problems themselves. It's we as the adult we really need to see these things that take place and try to mend all of this by understanding that, hey, you might in a relationship and that relationship don't necessarily have to work out. It don't mean you're a failure. Let's be realistic. Relationship don't work out every single day. That's a part of life. It don't mean you fail as a parent. It don't mean you fail as an individual. But what we have to do is know that we have to foster that whole co-parenting concept and understand that co-parenting concept is super important for the divinity and this upholding the structure of our culture. Because you see, if we don't foster that two-parent household and that mindset where the mother and father is fully involved in our youth life or present in our youth life, then it will really rub the youth them the wrong way, and it will lead them to start some criticism that is really leading them down the wrong road. Because if a youth start to criticize you because you live in a two-parent household, then automatically it tells that his brain is not wired the right way. His brain is wired the wrong way. And then, as you mentioned, he might be crying out for love. But with the youths crying out for love and they don't know how to verbalize that then become their reality. And then with that becoming their reality now, they start getting into different things that they don't want to get into, that they might regret along the way. And who know how far they will go. And they might go to certain ends where they can't come back. And that's how now we contribute to the deterioration of a youth.
give thanks for sports, because sports are able to provide a lot of things that people don't get in the house, you know. Feeling wanted, family structure, that discipline, that accountability. People, they may be in denial about it, fire, but they actually love it. But the flip side of it is that crews and gangs provide the same thing. That's why they're an integral part of the community. All they're doing is providing what the household failed to provide and what that child's looking for. They're looking for the elder, even though he's manipulating them to do things that's not beneficial to him. He's getting that validation for doing things that's not beneficial to him. He has that camaraderie. People are checking for him. You get a little prestige. You know, if your family don't really have a name in the community, now you got a little prestige. So it's just like these institutions really benefit and thrive from the dysfunction, but they're providing the same principles that would have been provided in a stable environment.
And I love how you mention or you reference the gang as an institution. Because you see, if we don't look at it as an
integral institution environment,
if we don't look at it as an institution, you know, then automatically we don't understand the concept, because these are stable, not because they're not registered by the system. It's not only formal entities registered by the system that are institutions. These are institutions swaying and teaching our youths the wrong set of things. And how did our youths get exposed to these institutions, or how did they get enrolled into these institutions? They got enrolled into these institutions. They got enrolled into these institutions because of neglect, because of the concept that there's not two parties that are governing their thoughts, because really and truly there's a masculine entity that needs to govern the thought of a youth. There's a feminine energy that needs to govern the thought of a youth. So a youth have a rounded mindset and not a one-sided mindset. And when that youth has that stable mindset now from two parties, that is what really develop a youth for understand that, hey, if this mindset can't work in this situation, then this next mindset might just be able to work in this situation, because sometimes you have to be more diplomatic. Sometimes you have to all out revolutionary and grassroots to the approach. A mother and a father teach you these different approaches. And that's what we really need to make the youth them start to understand that it's not a crime. It's not something bad for you to have access to a mother and father who you can garner information and get a direction from. But I feel like we don't see the actions that we put up or bestow upon our youths as parents. And I feel like that's the whole thing, because everybody's running from it. They don't want to take any blame. Nobody wants to take accountability for this thing. But when we really tap into the way how youths think, we realize, there's a whole underground perspective taking place, and the youths are criticizing and verbalizing a lot of dysfunctions within the society. And then in turn, the youths who are actually being guided are feeling like they're doing the wrong thing. See what I say? It causes a whole bunch of confusion.
And fire exposure is very important, because I go depending on what area you are. Exposure is very important, because depending on what area you're in, you get so saturated with the culture within that environment because you haven't been anywhere. And unfortunately, what I notice is that because you haven't been anywhere, you haven't really been exposed to other things, whatever you see as the family. So you may see a family, a husband, wife, and it's not ideal in your eyes, right? So you think that's the norm because your sample size is so small. You haven't seen a lot of couples, or you have a friend that tells you about something that's going on in your house. You don't have that, but that's your reference. So like you just take that in and just figure this is the norm, and that's not the case. So I think exposure is so important, but unfortunately for a lot of the kids, when they don't have that support system, or they don't have the talent to be in certain groups, they don't get that exposure, and they're kind of stuck in a bubble of ignorance, and their views are very limited because what they have access to may not necessarily be the best thing, and it distorts their whole view of reality. And I feel that online is doing that now too, especially depending on what your algorithm is. Your algorithm is what you're seeing and what they're giving back to you. That mirror what they're giving back to you, because all I see is people who are not married speaking about marriage. Then now everyone's regurgitating these things about marriage, but like, who have you been exposed to? Well, my father and my mother, or my friend. All right, that's two couples. Then what you're hearing online every day. So it's just that that constant repetition of ideas that's creating our mind is not necessarily accurate. And I think you need to you're the statistic man. So increase your sample size so you can make a more realistic or more accurate assessment of what's
become
going on.
Statistically significant.
Yeah, so but
it's weird fire because think about this. How stupid it sounds when I get it. It's being done by kids, right? But how crazy it sound when you can actually criticize a person or laugh at a person for having access to more resources than
Far right,
you.
far right. It's not. It's not. Think about it. You know, depending on what area you're in, the kids have certain shoes on. So it seems like the more stable the parents are for financially, not even stable, but kind of more educated, the kids have a lower price sneaker, right? Where the finance is a little tricky, access to resources a little tricky. For some reason, the child has a higher price shoe. Now, if you're in that environment and your child's there, right, they're going to hike on your child because she doesn't have the latest shoe. Because in their mind now, in their environment, they're not thinking about like life, bills, what's in the fridge, where they live. They just know that this is the thing. Like who has this is the coolest. So it's just the socialization and normalization, you know? And it's like, maybe it needs to be like going to school or something and do a little class on it or rap to a kid because it's just that environment that creates this idea that they have, you know, and they internalize the neglect that they have and they don't know how to like process it. Because every child wants to be loved, fight. Every child wants to be wanted. Let's keep it a buck.
Every single one.
You know, and they put all these walls acting tough and all this excitement and please, you know. Anyone who really like been outside and dealt with kids, you know already, yeah. You probably got a couple out there that's really like just sociopaths, but that's not the norm, you know. Most of them are putting up all these barriers to hide the hurt.
Yeah, they're really soft when you think about it. Like really soft.
And that's one of the issues I have with the media because when someone does something, right, they really paint him as like a vicious person. If you know, if I man soft as I don't know what, you know, he had a gun and he was scared, or he felt threatened and he was scared and he had a firearm, so he used it. But he's not a tough person. And you feel bad for him knowing he about to go inside that box because he is not a tough person.
Not at all.
You know, so it's like majority of people, man, super soft as tissue. You know, they may link up with certain people and move in a little group, but once you get them one-on-one, nah, bro, soft, man.
So it does go to show that men and women need to overstand where they stand. Because you see, the moment they understand where they stand and how they can navigate those differences. Again, you don't have to see eye to eye, and I'm not blaming any parent at all. Not blaming any parent at all for separating or anything of that nature, because I can tell you to go through a situation where you're struggling with a partner. So that is your personal thing, but we have to still realize that once we have children, extension of ourselves, we must think beyond just ourselves and think about the implication of that child's mindset, that child's well-being, how that child is growing up. Because, you know, most people, once you have children and based off of how that children is kind of navigating their part, they forgot that they were once children too. And there are certain things that build a youth, like mindset and a youth. This is history in the making. You take your child, a mother and a father take a child. Just an example, take a child to go and get ice cream today. You know that child probably might remember that for the rest of them life. Like, on Sunday, you know, I went to get ice cream with my mother and father. That basic thing trigger something in their mind for sure. They really love me. This simple act that you do just to make sure that your youth feel good and can understand that, hey, what's really, have a conversation with your youth. What is really taking place? What's going on in your mind? Is there anything bothering you? And you can't approach it just from that broader standpoint. You have to put yourself in the shoes as a youth to relate to the youth and really make the youth get lessons that can impact and bring them life towards some form of substance and see it from two angles. Maybe there's some situations where a mother can't solve it. Just be honest about it. There's certain situations where a father can't solve it. It might require the mother in that instance because the mother might be the subject expert, or the mother might have had some form of similar instance growing up. But just the way certain things female can approach better than male and male can approach better than female. Just to have that option of approaching that from both ways for a child is that resource. It's almost like you go to a library and you realize that within this particular section of library, it's to focus on this topic. I can search within these books, find the answers. A next section might include some other form of expertise where I can find that information. And that's what a two-parent household is. Again, That's re-emphasized again. You don't have to be stuck in a relationship that you would think is sad or think is not contributing towards your well-being. But when we think about the concept of co-parenting, we have to put that difference aside, make sure our youth have access towards those resources and they don't feel like they're doing something wrong or they're in a spot where they're too privileged. How can you be too privileged to have two parents? That's the norm. That should be the norm.
Fine, I'll keep it a buck. I'm gonna finish out with this. I always considered myself a growing up privileged, and it wasn't because of the economics. I'm gonna keep it a buck.
Exactly.
Reason I always said I was privileged because I had two parents that cared about me and had discipline. Not when I was young, but the older I got, man, I would sometimes say people I grew up privileged, and they look at you like this and that. But it's like, no, it's not privileged because of geography,
not economics. Mm-hmm.
It's I had parents that really cared, like, man, really checked you and disciplined you and told you right from wrong and held you accountable and had rules and regulations. And it wasn't no free fall. So in reality, I did grow up privileged.
Very much. Very much. Very much.
All right, so we're good on that. That's 2.